President of Women in Mining Association of Namibia, a true change agent and inspiring leader. Let us join strategic thinker and seasoned facilitator Kasi Itana now to guide the conversation for us. And don't forget, engage with us in the comments section. Thank you.
Thank you, Marisa, for that great introduction. Good afternoon, everyone, and a warm welcome to all of you, particularly our virtual audience out there. My name is Kase Itana, and I am a leadership development facilitator and currently country director, Synagos Institute. I'll be moderating today's Lean-In Circle on showing up at your work and in your industry with Zenzi Awases. Welcome, Zenzi, and thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Zenzi has been working in the mining sector over 15 years and has been developing in a passionate leader in her sector. Zenzi was recently recognized as one of the 100 most inspirational women in mining globally for 2020. Congratulations on this great accomplishment, Zenzi. Without further ado, let me get right into the session and hear from Zenzi herself. Zenzi, would you tell us about your background?
Thanks, Kase. First of all, thank you. Thanks, Kase, for having me here, and to Old Mutual for inviting me back for this session. My background, so I was born in Otjiwarongo, a northern town in Namibia, and grew up in a small mining town called Arandas. And I guess that's where my story goes to, because growing up in a mining town and ending up in the mining industry, I went to school in Arandas, did my senior primary. I moved back to Windhoek, and I've been doing my primary school as well as my high school in Windhoek. I went on to study, actually I enrolled for a BSc degree at the University of Namibia. And in my second year, I think it was, I then took on geology as a subject that was just to fill my credits. And then from there, we were informed that the particular geology module wasn't going to continue. And for some reason, this geology degree or subject caught my attention. And I decided to explore that, and I went to South Africa, to Pretoria, to go and pursue my studies in geology. I then got my degree in 2004, it was, and in 2005, I came back to Namibia, where I was employed by Namdeb Corporation as a staff geologist. That's really where I spent my formative years, and I really believe that my dad called it political teeth, but I think my teeth in this whole journey was cut in Oranjemund at Namdeb, yeah. And then in 2012, I accepted a transfer to our marine sister company at Dep Marine Namibia, with a head office here in Windhoek. And then, so that's 2012. And yeah, that I think in a nutshell tells a little bit of who I am and what my background is.
Wow, quite interesting. From Otjiwarongo to Arandas back to Windhoek.
Yes.
Zenzi, please tell me your aha moment, that pivotal moment when you began to realize your contribution within the sector.
So I was, I think when we had a conversation, I was saying I was really a happy-go-lucky geologist, really in the field, in the desert, minding my own business, drinking my water. And then in 15 is when I received my 10-year certificate in the industry, for this company I was working for. And I think it was at that moment that I thought, 10 years? What have you done in the 10 years that you've been here? Mm-hmm. And I realized there was a little bit of frustration brewing, and I couldn't place my finger on it. But I knew that I wanted to make a change in my life. not sure what it was. I just decided that I want to go to business school. And I think it was around that time when my awareness became real of what's going on around me, noticing that as a senior at this point, senior geologist, I'm still just scratching the proverbial ceiling. At that point, I think I was in a supervisory role, and I thought, nah, man, after 10 years, this can't be real. And then I remember just doing a research, and I came across a TED Talk. Don't ask me who the lady was, but it's a fantastic Canadian leader who said that about 1% of all top leaders in the world are female, and that struck my attention. And she said that the reason why females do not make it to the C-suite is because they lack business acumen. And I'm like, aha, that's it. I'm going to go acquire my business acumen. And I enrolled for a certificate, really. It was a diploma in business management at the University of Stellenbosch Business School. It was while I was at this business school, mind you, I enrolled for this module because my plan was that after 10 years, I'm going to bow out of this industry and prepare myself to open a coffee shop. And so I thought, but you don't know anything about business, so go and understand what business is. So I enrolled for this course. And as life has it, the modules that interested me to this program, which was entrepreneurship, future studies, and I think coaching, were at the end of the year. So I had to go through all the human capital management, economics, and the interesting thing, and I think that's where my aha moment came through, is right throughout every module, I would encounter or I would discover this thing about diversity. And I realized, but this must be what was growing in my frustration. So I decided to pursue that, but with no idea that it would lead me into the mining industry and where I am today. So that was the aha moment. I think it was when I was at business school in 2016. Yeah. Thank
you, Zenzi. So you have shown up for women in the industry and I think beyond in many ways. In April 2017, you were named founding president of the Women in Mining Association. Am I right? Mm-hmm. In November 2019, you were elected to the board of the Association of Women in Africa as a representative for Southern Africa. Wow, that's great. And last Thursday, when I got the news, I shouted and I celebrated because you were recognized as one of the 100 most inspirational women in mining globally. These are great accomplishments. Can you tell us what is the biggest challenge women are facing in the mining sector at the moment?
Well, thanks for celebrating with me, Kase. Those are really great accolades, which I'm still trying to sink in, because as I said earlier, I don't do these things to get recognition, but it's great when I do get recognized for it. I think, and it's not a challenge just in the mining sector. It's a challenge, I think, for most females as they progress in their career. And the biggest thing I've noticed, because as you're growing, you're thinking, oh, okay, it's a lack of diversity. No, it's not that. You think it's a lack of inclusion. Well, because at the earlier session I said that diversity plus inclusion equals equality. Because eventually that's what we're looking for. We actually want to be given equal opportunities to really fare well in our fields. Because when we're studying in our degrees towards whether it is financial manager or an institution, whether it is mining manager, you are studying next to your male colleague. But what I realized is that as much as diversity and inclusion are what everybody's after, the biggest barrier that we are facing is unconscious bias. Is this phenomenon where, although our male colleagues recognized, and unconscious bias in gender that is, although our male colleagues realize and they know what our contribution is to the sectors, the thing they will always still think is it's a very, so it's unconscious bias together with the cultural norms. So
tell us a bit more about that.
So unconscious bias is basically where somebody, without realizing, will apply a bias to a situation. So in my case, for example, they would say, Zenzi, you are not ready for move up on the ladder, that is. And the excuses you'll get is something like, but you've got a family to look after. Yeah, so does my male colleague, but that doesn't deter him from moving up the ladder. Things you'll hear, for example, is, as a female, what are you doing here, knowing full well that who must look after the children? Yet, when you're sitting on the university benches or even in the school benches, nobody considers the fact that you're a female. You know, when you are pursuing a degree in mining, or nobody considers the fact that you are a female when you're pursuing a degree. I'm now thinking of banking, for example, where there's another sector where you don't see a lot of females up in the industry. So you're thinking, but how is that a problem? You know, can we address that? And I think it goes both ways. It's not just the males who suffer from unconscious bias, it's even us as females, because we have this extra added pressure on us because we want to work harder, yet so now we kind of think small of ourselves. And I think that is the biggest barrier. It's not the fact that there's a lack of, what's the word I'm looking for? The lack of diversity it is a problem, but the biggest one is unconscious bias.
So can you share a particular example in your industry as you were sort of moving up the ladder, where you came across unconscious bias and how you dealt with that?
Sure, okay. As I mentioned, so when I started this Women in Mining Association a couple of years ago, it's when I used it in the intro video as well. The guy who's leading me right now, my direct line manager, is somebody who I sat right next to in the geology class of UNAM in, I can't remember which year it was, when it was the first class. And I keep on wondering, why is this guy leading? I mean, it took me a while, of course, to realize. But, you know, and then you realize this is it. This guy is leading me. I don't understand why he's leading me, because we've got the same qualification. We've got equal amount of years of experience. Yet this guy is leading me. I don't understand why he's leading me. And then it's when you realize that when you go into meetings, they take you to meetings. But you're forever the 2IC, second in charge. And then they will be saying, what Zenzi is trying to say actually is. And you're saying, but I prepared the presentation, so why are you, how did I deal with it? It's really just slowly and surely making people aware of it. By pointing out these differences. By pointing out that, for example, another one is in the industry, one of the things, mining industry this is, one of the things that's highlighted to us is that the industry has opened the doors for us in terms of bringing us in, So you see a whole lot more female geologists, a whole lot more female engineers on mines that as you used to a couple of years ago. Yet the industry forgot little things like us wearing the same male pants or PPE, the uniform that you wear. And then you're thinking, but you haven't quite welcomed us, There are small little things like they would open the doors for us, yet there's no changing room for us, on a mine. And so it's little things like that. But over time, by bringing awareness to it, now the industry is at least saying, you're quite right, let's try and change. There are some mines that are now actively and consciously acquiring female PPE, and PPE is, the uniform that we wear, safety uniform that we wear. And there are some mines that are actively actually making sure that there are female toilets in the mine that people are, or even in the plants that females are working in.
So, at a time where there are no female toilets, how did you handle that situation? It's a big challenge.
You remind me of my first assignment in Bogenveld, which is was an exploration camp, and they sent me to go work there for. It was actually, I was being sent there for a specific reason, and I arrived there. It was a camp of 20 men, and I arrived there as the only female. And then my supervisor says, "Zenzi, sit in the car while I consult these guys out." And all I can hear is, "What is she doing here? Where will she go to the toilet? Where will she shower?" And I'm thinking, is that really a problem? I'm a geologist. I can go anywhere. But what those guys did is that they actually had to, they separated their bathing facilities and gave me my own shower and my own toilet. So, yeah. Yeah.
That's great. So what other challenges can you sort of share apart from the ones that you have shared?
What other challenges is that now in women progressing up in
Yeah,
leadership?
yeah, yeah.
For me, you know, the ones that are there are the obvious ones, but I still hammer on unconscious bias being the biggest one.
Great. What some specific steps that emerging leaders across industries can take to address these challenges?
As female leaders, I think it's very important that, I think it was Eba Galondo who once wrote said that you have to remember that you got the job, and not because of your gender, but because of who you are. So it's very important that we stop looking at ourselves as the first female who. You have to take off that bias yourself, and I think you have to, when you go in there, you have to remember that you are there because of what you can bring to the table. I think, and in my case as well, it took me a while to realize I'm in a male-populated industry, and that's another thing.
It's very interesting. You talk about, everybody talks about male-dominated, and you say male-populated. So
Yeah, I mean,
can
because
you expand a little bit on that?
The word dominated is such a self-limiting word. You know, yes, you've got more males in the industry. Doesn't mean that they're dominating. The industry is densely populated by the industry, by males. It doesn't mean that they're dominating. Now, if you walk in there and say, I'm now entering a male-dominated industry, by just saying the word dominating, you're already giving yourself a self-imposed barrier. Yeah. So I really think that's another thing we should do. Let's stop looking at these words that have been sort of circulating, which are really self-limiting.
So you're suggesting that we look at the concepts that we are using that are very limiting.
Yeah.
Could you point at another, because I think the audience would enjoy hearing what are some of these limiting concepts that we are using out there?
Dominating, yes. The other one I think is a female does not. No. The other one I think is a woman's job. I think it says nurturing. We are natural nurturers. So what happens when you enter a boardroom is that they usually ask the female board member or the person in that meeting to say, "Well, you take care of the lunch for us." No. We've got people that can take care of lunch. I'm sure you can order lunch for yourself. The other one is, well, you take the minutes for us. Why can't somebody else take the minutes? So it's really just, and as a female, well, I mean, we are nurtured, but there are things that we have accepted as norm, and we shouldn't really. We should remember that we are here because of because I'm qualified to be here, not because I am a token, and you just slash the whole tokenism thing.
That's interesting. When you started, you talked about diversity and you also spoke about culture. Can we sort of talk a little bit and dive deeper into the concept of culture as one of the challenges that we face as female leaders?
One of my favorite quotes, and again, don't ask me who it was, but something I learned at business school is, culture is strategy for breakfast, right? You can have the best strategy, you can have the best strategy on how to include more women in the industry, you can have the best, but culture, if you haven't incorporated that, I always use the example, and that's something I discovered while I was doing my human capital management course. The mining industry, especially, I'll talk about Namibia, I'm not too familiar with what's going on out there that much, but our mines are owned by multinational conglomerates, right? Which could be in Europe. Yeah. In an area like the Northern Hemisphere, diversity, those issues are not that, they've gone past that. Now you bring that here, where now first, where you're trying to bring an organizational culture which says, I want to see more females in leadership, right? But you come here where that is not quite going to work, because now already here, they look at things like, oh, my mind went.
No, it's fine.
A little bit, but now you are reminded as an African woman where you need to be, for example, and then so you have. My mind is literally going.
Come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does our culture tell us?
Our culture our culture talks about females are inferior to males, which is not how many males see it, should see it, right? Now when you enter a where you enter a boardroom which is being led by a male, an African male, for example, who has that mindset, it's very difficult to bring in what the global market is trying to tell you. And so unless we address that cultural difference, it will be very difficult to break that barrier.
Any examples of how this sort of showed up in your journey towards a senior position? Any cultural examples? Quite often we're told that your experience is lesser than mine because you had a break, because you went on maternity leave. So even though probably your colleague that you're talking about, it seemed to have more experience than you because you took a maternity leave.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because that actually did happen, not just to me, but to a few other colleagues of mine, where somebody would say, yeah, you know, it's quite right. We've got the same amount of years of experience. But remember, you've got 2 children, which means you took 18 months out. So they would count, and initially when I heard this, I thought it was a joke, but they're actually being very serious. Mm-hmm. They count the fact that you took 9 months, you're pregnant for 9 months, plus you took 4 months break. That but you can't count that as we have equal amount of years of experience. So yeah, that definitely is what some guys are thinking out there.
Could you elaborate a little bit when you have the equation of diversity plus inclusion equals empowerment? Could you elaborate what it means in practical terms? Because I think there are many audience there who want to know, what does it mean in real life?
So the term diversity refers to bringing different people together. I'll just point again, just touch on gender and not just on race or anything else. So the term diversity talks about bringing different genders together and into a workplace, right? Because the saying is that you bring a whole diverse way of thinking if you mix the 2 genders. But inclusion refers to not just looking at Kase as a female and Isaac as a male. It looks at so they value your contribution, right? So now you've got 2 different ways of thinking, but you're not just there as a pretty face. You're actually there because they value your contribution. If you bring those two things together, it would actually look at equal field. It will bring equality. You will no longer be looked at as a female. In my case, geologist. They will say Zenzi the geologist, because they value what Zenzi brings to the table. So now if you bring those things together, it will lead you towards equality. And as I keep on saying, but that will not work if, for example, I see myself as I am less, I'm a lesser contributor to the table because I'm female, or if Isaac, I'm sorry, Isaac, for using your name as an example. but if Isaac says, yeah, but Kase, you actually are just here because you're female. I'm not going to use your contribution to the table. I might use only a small bit. So you're not exploring the full benefit of what diversity really should bring, because diversity, there's been a lot of business cases where it says that diversity can change improve your bottom line, for example. Now if you are just using me for being on that board, but you're not using how I can save you money, for example, then you will not achieve the full benefit of what diversity is supposed to bring.
Quite interesting concept. Recently I came across the word diversity, but we were talking about diversity of ideas and diversity of thought. Have you come across that, and what would you say if you move beyond diversity, as you said, that diversity male, female are included, but you really want to value the thoughts and the ideas that women are putting on the table? Any examples from your industry? So
I came across a case study where they were looking at how to, because again, I must just use my industry, so these trucks that we drive on the mines, for example, they've proven that a team led by females, the truck lasts longer and stuff like that.
Wow.
And now that really interested me a little bit, and I wondered why. Because isn't it that females are said that we are the worst drivers ever? Now, what came out of that study is actually was on a mine. There was one mine who did study in South Africa, another one in Australia. And it was more because we were very careful on how we applied pressure on the brakes and on the clutch, for example, but also because we planned our shift much better. So where the thinking was more, go and get the ore, bring it to the plant and just mine, the female-led team would, for example, say, this is the deliverable that we're looking after, how are we going to get it? Now, I'm not sure if it is a male-female thing only, but the fact that the female could sit down and plan her shift better, to know that this truck has to last a little bit longer for the bottom line to be improved, that brings a whole different discussion to the table.
Quite interesting. So you also have been driving these big Webco trucks?
No.
Oh, okay.
I haven't. I took a ride in it once, but I haven't driven one myself.
That's very interesting. Any other issue that you want to add to that before we sort of shift our attention and begin to engage our virtual audience? I'm sure they are sitting on the edge of their chairs, having so many questions to ask you.
No, not that I can think of, Kase. I think we can just delve right into the questions, and I'll be able to try and answer them as they come.
Thank you. We're shifting our attention to the virtual audience. So we will be going for the questions out there. There are no questions yet. I think this is an interactive session. So whoever is out there, I'm really encouraging you. We really have a great resource here. Zenzi Awases, I've shared with you her accomplishments. So we have an opportunity. So while you're thinking about the questions, I'll be turning to Zenzi and asking more about her career. So what are the next steps for you after what you have achieved in this industry?
I think for me, so the Women in Mining Association of Namibia is still very young. We're about 3 years old now. And for me as the chairperson or the president, apparently I must say president and not chairperson, so I'm getting used to that as well. But as a chairperson, I think my biggest drive is, so it took us